Right now, almost 1 in 3 car buyers want to buy completely online, and if your dealership can't close that deal, someone else will. Accelerate My Deal Elite gives you real online checkout, ID and insurance verification, and dealer control without changing the way you work. Visit dealdoers.com to learn more.
Hey, it's Daily Drive, executive producer Jake Neer in Detroit. Thanks for joining me for this bonus episode of the show. Earlier this week, automotive news reporter Richard Truitt had a story about the end of the Kia Soul. For a certain number of people, it was one of the most beloved and quirky vehicles in recent memory. After 17 years and more than 1.5 million units sold in the U.S., Kia is ending production of what was actually its all-time best-selling vehicle here in America. So what made the Soul so special? Why did it succeed where competitors failed? And what does its departure say about where the industry is heading? Here to talk about that with me today is my colleague, Richard Truitt. Richard, great to have you back on Daily Drive.
Jake, every now and then we get to do a really fun story. We have to cover the other stuff too, but every now and then we get a story that basically will just tell itself because it's so much fun.
Well, and I also think there's a lot of value here too, to people understanding what happened here with the Kia Soul. You spent a lot of time talking to Soul owners for this piece. What surprised you the most about sort of the passion that people have for this quirky little car?
You know, it's a really rare thing when a car appeals across all the demographic groups: first-time buyers, last-time buyers, and people in between, singles, families, and all the other permutations you can think of. Everybody seemed to love the Kia Soul. And why is that? Well, it's hard to pinpoint just one thing. I think it's a bunch of things. First of all, it's a small car, but it has a lot of interior room. That's really important. You know, people can put their stuff in it and their family in it. That's important. It's easy to get in and out of. The step in height, some of the owners told me, was really low, and they liked that. They didn't want to get an SUV, but they wanted the utility of an SUV. Now, when the Soul came out, it was mostly aimed at young people. And so Kia came up with this advertising campaign that had these hip hop hamsters in it. And
I remember that so well. Absolutely.
That kind of created a funky image for the car. And then, and the really strange thing is the last one of those ads aired 10 years ago, 2015, and people still talk about it. It just created an image. So you have the image, a really agreeable price point around 20 grand, a car that gives you everything that you need in terms of room and utility, and it's fun to drive, and it really hasn't aged because it kind of looks the same. And you know, they just captured this kind of magic in a bottle. The designer who worked on it, Tom Kearns, we kind of decided that it was a happy accident that all these things came together and worked so well. Because if automakers could do that, if there was a formula that they could write down on a page and duplicate it, every car would be like the Kia Soul. But it's a very hard thing to do, and somehow Kia did it.
There you go. I mean, that what you mentioned about the space and the interior and it still being relatively small. I mean, just having that roomy feeling, but still being able to park it. I think it's such a good combo right there.
It also, I want to mention that, Kia had to work a little bit too. I mean, over the years, there have been bigger engines and manual transmissions and EV versions and CVTs, and there's a special edition when it in 2018 when they sold 1 million, they made a 1 millionth edition, and so they worked to keep it fresh too. It's not like they just didn't change it; they worked to keep it fresh.
Well, and like you said, it's been around for 17 years, sold over 1.5 million units in the U.S. Why do you think that it succeeded, whereas these other maybe so-called toaster cars, I hope that's not too demeaning of a term, but, like the Scion XB, the Honda Element, those ones sort of failed. So what set the Soul apart?
I think toaster is kind of a term of endearment. At least it is to the Soul crowd, because people, the Soul crowd, a lot of them name their cars, and some people call their toaster car Toaster. So they love it. That's kind of a difficult question to answer. But if we look back, we see that the first generation Scion XB sold really well. And then Toyota did what other automakers always do. The next generation was bigger and it looked a little different and it was more expensive, and people turned away from it. So it was a redesign that stripped the car of what people liked about it. So that one kind of went by the wayside, and it lasted 2 generations and gone. The Honda Element had a pretty good run too, but Honda never really invested in it. There wasn't a great advertising campaign around it, and the price crept up a little bit. And then they had competition from their own CRV and whatnot, and that kind of just faded away. The Nissan Cube was always going to be one of those cars that was really out there. I mean, it was designed for the Japanese market, and cars over there tend to be like really, really wacky. And they brought it over, and it was just too different looking to ever really, really be a mainstream hit. Somehow the Soul kind of threaded all those needles and avoided all the mistakes that everybody else made.
You mentioned the names. I have to say a couple of these because they were so funny to me. You talked to Soul owners who named their cars things like Boxcar Willie and Hamster Cube. Love that. I love the creativity. I'm a car namer myself, so my car's name is Tallulah. So but it's always so fun to hear that. Now, one owner that you spoke to told you that she bought her third Soul. She's put nearly 200,000 miles across all three of them. What do you think is driving that kind of loyalty to an entry level economy car? This isn't like a car that is way up the chain here. It's something that like you said, it was marketed toward younger folks that couldn't afford super expensive new cars.
She told me that she sees herself in the car. She said the car is me. She identifies with it as a kind of image that she wants to project, that people can look at the car and think of her. And she just totally identifies with it. And that is another really, really hard thing for an automaker to do, to have people so passionate about the car that they make it part of their family. Now, she's 75 years old, and she drives all around Phoenix to retirement communities where she plays piano and sings. And so she brings equipment with her. And so she needs a car that has a lot of room for her stuff. And, when she heard that they were not going to make them anymore, and her previous car, I think it was a 2019, was starting to get up there in mileage, she was determined to get one last Soul before, they're all sold out. So she went to the dealership, and she brought her checkbook, and she said, "I'm a buyer." And she drove a hard bargain, but she left with a new car. And she's hoping that this will be her last car. But I don't think that there's any other car that any other automaker could sell her. She loves the Soul so much.
It's part of her identity at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Richard, we've covered the personal side of things here. In a minute or so, we're going to talk about the business and industry angle. It's coming up next here on this bonus episode of Daily Drive.
Hey, quick question. What if nearly 1 in 3 customers who walked onto your lot were ready to buy before they ever got there? That's not a hypothetical. That's actually happening right now. Almost 1 in 3 consumers say they want to complete their car purchase completely online. The question is your dealership able to close that deal online, or are you handing it off to someone who is? That's where AutoTrader's Accelerate My Deal Elite online checkout comes in. Accelerate My Deal Elite isn't just another digital retailing tool that takes the dealer out of the equation. It's built with you in mind. You stay in control of the deal. Pricing, terms, the whole thing, while your customers do the heavy lifting up front from the comfort of their home. We're talking real online checkout, built-in ID and insurance verification, and a seamless experience that fits right into the way your team already works. No ripping out your process, no retraining your whole staff, just more deals done faster. And here's the thing, your competitors aren't sitting on this. The dealers who move first are the ones capturing those online buyers. Don't let that be someone else's win. Reach out to your AutoTrader rep today and ask about Accelerate My Deal Elite, or visit dealdoers.com to learn more. Your customers are ready. The question is, are you?
All right, Richard. So let's talk a little bit about the business implications here. The Soul was Kia's all-time bestseller. Yes, you heard that right, listener. The Soul was Kia's all-time bestseller here in the U.S., but they're ending production anyway. Walk us through why Kia made that decision, even though it's created this huge devoted fan base.
Well, I talked to Eric Watson, who's the vice president of sales for Kia, and he told me that the end of the Soul was planned long before the trade tensions and tariffs and all the other things that are making imported cars difficult here in the US in 2026. The Soul was made in Korea, and it does have a 15% tariff at this point in time. But really, if you look at where Kia was in late 2009 when the Soul came out and where they are today, it's a very different company. Very, very different company. Back in 2009, Kia was known for value cars, right? You didn't buy a Kia because you liked the way it looked. You didn't buy it because it was the fastest thing or anything like that. You bought it because you didn't have a lot of money to spend on a car and you just needed something new with a warranty. Now look where Kia is. They have a showroom full of really stylish cars and SUVs, and they are a completely different company. They're still offer plenty of value, but they're far up on the hierarchy of brands now from where they were. And so in that sense, the Soul didn't fit in anymore. It had an MSRP of 21,000, which is, it's pretty low compared to where the rest of the market is today. I mean, it's an entry-level car. There's not going to be a lot of money in it. And so I think for Kia, they thought maybe it's time to move on. Now, there's another hatchback in their lineup called the K4, which I asked, is that the natural successor to the Soul? And the jury's out on that. We don't know. No, it doesn't have the same kind of looks. It's bigger and it's more expensive, but it's a hatchback, and Kia will probably do pretty good selling it. But the real test is, will it have the passion of the Soul? And we don't know that, but my guess is probably not.
Well, it also sort of leaves dealers without an entry point, right? I mean, there's no direct replacement, as you said, in the lineup. And so what does this mean for dealers who can't say, like, hey, here's this $22,000 car, you can get in this today, and in a world where the average new car is $50,000, that's a pretty good sales pitch.
Well, I spoke to a salesman in Illinois, and he told me that some Soul owners, when they outgrow their cars, they have been successful into moving them into a Seltos or a Sportage, and so it's possible that they could do that. But another buyer told me he'd like to stick with Kia, but now he's looking at other brands too. So, yes, they're losing their entry level car that has a lot of loyalty behind it. But here's the thing, Jake. Is it possible that Kia could bring out a successor to the Soul? Yeah, I think so. I think that the name has so much goodwill behind it that eventually, someday, there will be a successor to it. And I asked Tom Kearns, I said, what do you have in the lineup today that, has a lot of the elements of it? And there's a car that they don't sell here called the EV3, which is a good-looking hatchback. But if you look at the front of it, it's not unlike the current Soul. It's very possible that we'll see that car here. They've talked about it, and maybe around New York Auto Show time, we'll hear if it's coming over. That might be, in the interim, until that name appears on a vehicle again, something that could work.
All right, Richard, I know you're a huge car guy, and so I have to ask this question to end off things here. With the Soul going away, it's for one thing, man, I said that and I'm like, wow, that feels like a metaphor in some ways. Cars have represented something to people for decades and decades, in the US especially, where car culture is so strong. We've talked about this in the past, you and me. And it also appealed to such a diverse group. You had young buyers, you had seniors, families. Now automakers are moving more upmarket. I mean, Kia and Hyundai are great examples. They're moving toward more electrified vehicles. So I'm wondering, are we losing this, affordable, quirky vehicle culture that, attracts these really dedicated fan bases, and kind of like, again, with your car being sort of part of your identity and your personality, are we moving into an era where that's just not the vibe anymore?
I can answer that question in two ways. If we look at the domestic auto industry and the bigger import players like Volkswagen and whatnot, I would say yes. But if you take a look at what's going on in China, we're seeing incredible creativity. Some of their designs are like really, really out there and wackadoodle, but some of them, like the BYD Dolphin, are kind of pretty cool.
Mhm.
So it may be that if there is a void in the market that's left by the absence of cars like the Kia Soul, that maybe the Chinese step in and fill it. We'll have to see.
Richard Truitt's piece in Automotive News is Heart and Soul, Kia bids farewell to a beloved funky classic. Richard, excellent writing here. Really appreciate your look into this, and thanks for joining us here on this episode of Daily Drive.
Thanks for having me on, Jake.
Thanks for listening to this bonus episode of Daily Drive. Come back on Monday for a brand new full episode of the show.